Let us look at the regret criteria of decision-making process under uncertainty. The regret criteria is based on the fact that having selected an alternative that does not turn out to be the best, the decision maker will regret not having chosen another alternative when he or she had the opportunity. In other words, regret represents opportunity loss, that is, the opportunity to obtain a higher payoff if another strategy had been selected. Let us consider the given example. There are 5 strategies to buy 100, 200, 300, 400 and 500 trees. And there are 5 states of nature which represent the sales of trees, that is N1, N2, N3, N4 and 5. N1 would be the case where 100 trees are sold, N2 case where 200 trees are sold, N3 will be the case when 300 trees are sold, and so on. If we had the probabilities of each state, then we could have calculated the expected value of each strategy and chosen the one with the maximum expected value. However, since the probabilities are not available, this is a case of decision making under uncertainty. Each of the values in this matrix represents the payoff of a combination of a strategy and the state of nature. So for example, 1500 is the payoff if we buy 100 trees and actually the sale is also of 100 trees. While if we buy 200 trees and if we sell only 100 trees, then the payoff is minus 1000 and so on. Now the regret corresponds to a particular state of nature, because for each state of nature there are multiple strategies out of which the decision maker will choose a strategy, and depending on the strategy that the decision maker chooses, the regret may vary. So let us draw another matrix to calculate the regrets. Now let us first take state of nature N1. Now for this state of nature, the highest payoff is 1500. So ideally you would choose strategy S1, which will give you a payoff of 1500. Now considering that you would not choose S1 and choose other strategies, let's look at what will be the regret of each strategy for state N1. So for S1 N1 combination, if you don't choose strategy S1, then what will happen is that you will not get the profit that you will be getting by choosing S1. So instead of 1500, your regret would be 0. Now instead of S1, if you choose S2, then your payoff is minus 1000. So this is the profit, or in other terms loss, that you would incur if you choose S2 But at the same time, you are also losing the payoff difference between S1 and S2. So had you chosen S1, you would have made a profit of 1500. But since you're choosing S2, you are making a loss of 1000. So the overall regret for choosing strategy S2 would be the differential between the maximum payoff, which is 1500, minus the payoff of S2, that is minus 1000. Or in other terms, it will be 1500 minus 1000, that is 1500 minus 1000, which will be equal to 2500. So for S2, our regret would be 2500. For S3, again the same thing. The regret would be the differential between 1500 minus 3500. So 1500 minus 3500, which will be equal to 5000. Similarly, for S4, you will have regret as 7500, and for S5, it will be 10,000. Now let's look at state of nature N2. The highest payoff is 3000, which is if the decision maker selected strategy S2. Now instead of S2, if the decision maker selected strategy S1, then he would be losing 1500, which is the differential between 3000 minus 1500. So the regret for choosing strategy S1 instead of S2 will be 1500. If you don't choose strategy S2, the regret is 0. If you don't choose strategy S2 and instead choose S3, then the regret would be the differential between S2 and S3, which is 2500. For strategy S4, it will be 3000 minus 2000, which is 5000. And for S5, it will be 7500. Similarly, let's calculate the regret for all the other states of nature. Now, the idea here with the regret criteria is to choose a strategy which, even in the worst case scenario, would give you the minimum regret. So let's first find out what could be the worst case scenario for choosing each of the strategies. That is, for each of the strategies, let's find out what is the maximum regret. So let's take max regret. So for strategy S1, the maximum regret you could have is if state of nature N5 kicks off. That is, if you buy 100 trees, but the demand is for 500 trees. So your maximum regret for strategy S1 is 6000. Similarly, the maximum regret for strategy S2 is 4500. For S3, it is 5000. For S4, it is 7500. For S5, it is 10,000. Now, since we want to choose a strategy which would give us the minimum regret, 4500 is the minimum value of the maximum regrets. So that is corresponding to strategy S2. So our solution should be to choose strategy S2.